Hello and welcome back, everybody. Today Alice and I are getting ready to harvest some ground pears. Have you ever heard of the ground pear? Perhaps not. That's the common name, there's several actually, for this particular edible crop, known botanically as 𝗙𝗏𝗏 𝗙𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Some of the other common names are Peruvian ground apple, strawberry jicama, ground pear, pear of the earth, and sweet root. You may have heard it referred to before as 𝗙𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏. Now this is a frost-tender perennial plant. So if you live in a frost-free area, this will grow as a perennial year-round. In colder climates, as soon as you get that first cold snap, the plant begins to die back, at which point you can go ahead and pull your harvest of tubers. Now there's two different kinds of tubers that this plant produces. It has an edible tuber that looks similar to like a sweet potato, and it also has a purple-colored rhizome, which can be used to propagate new plants. So today Alice and I are going to go ahead and pull our harvest of tubers, and what we don't enjoy immediately, we can actually store in a cool, dark, dry place for several weeks. The tubers will actually sweeten up. Now the rhizomes I'm going to put in a bucket of slightly damp soil in an area like a greenhouse or a cellar, keep them above freezing, and then I'll plant those out the following spring. So Alice is going to be doing the honors today, pulling the harvest, and she's going to start off by using these garden claw gloves. The reason for that is that if you dig into the ground, just like with sweet potatoes and other potatoes, you're likely to actually dig into the tuber and damage them. Not a good thing. So we want to be gentle and try to dig around these root crops as best we can without using an invasive tool like a shovel. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and cut back whatever remains of the plant above ground, about a few inches above the soil surface. So we got down to 30 degrees Fahrenheit last night, a couple of degrees below freezing, and the plant had already been frostbitten, had a little bit of dieback, but last night really completed its life cycle here in our garden. Now before we get started harvesting the tubers, I just want to point out that another technique that I've employed over the years is to simply cut the plant back like you see here and then cover it with some kind of mulch like a straw to allow it to overwinter. If you want to attempt to overwinter the rhizomes in the ground in place, that would be how you do it. Now if you get down to the much colder temperatures, see a lot of snow and freezing temperatures, I don't recommend you try to overwinter the rhizomes in the ground, but rather harvest them and store them in a bucket like I mentioned earlier. So now Alice is going to go ahead and begin to excavate around the plant gently so that we can harvest those tubers without causing any further damage. So here at the base of the plant now, as we take a closer look, you can see the purple rhizomes poking up above the ground, trying to spit out some new plants. So I've been growing ground pears, or 𝗙𝗏𝗃𝗏𝗏, for about 8 years now, and in my experience, it's best to harvest the edible tubers as soon as you can after the plant dies back. Or the outer layer can crack if you get a lot of moisture, a lot of rain come in. All right, so I'm going to try to pull this up now.
Do you want me to try this?
Go for it. You got it. You got it. Keep going. There you go. Nice. So here's what we pulled out of this little hole. This was just one plant cluster growing. And we've got several tubers, a couple nice sized tubers, and many rhizomes as well. All right, so we're going to rinse these off now. So if you're going to try to store these to consume them later, first of all, any tuber that has any break in the skin, any crack, I'd consume those right away. Those aren't going to store well. But the rest of these tubers, even if they do have a little broken tip, will store well for 2 to 3 weeks in a cool, dark, dry area, something like a root cellar. And it's going to actually continue to sweeten up as the starch conversion occurs and the fruit becomes sweeter. But honestly, fresh is best in my opinion. I love to consume these as soon as possible after we dig them up out of the ground. So let's go ahead and break off the rest of the edible portion of these tubers. And by the way, the rhizome is edible as well. Now, something else worth mentioning with this particular crop is that because it converts its carbohydrate to something known as inulin, it is low glycemic and therefore has been deemed acceptable for use in those with type 2 diabetes. In fact, they even make a sweetener alternative known as yacon syrup and has been touted for helping to regulate blood sugar levels as well as help to stimulate metabolism, accelerating weight loss. Just yet more reasons to love this edible abundant crop. All right, so we took off all the larger delicious tubers, and these rhizomes, although you can break them off individually, I'll just show you by breaking one of them off like that. You could also just leave it in a cluster like this and bury these in your soil to keep them viable until the spring, at which point that's what I'd suggest doing, breaking these off right before planting. It's going to give you a higher success rate. So we'll set these aside for now. These are going to go in buckets of soil. Something else I forgot to mention earlier is that this plant is in the sunflower family, and it makes quite the showy ornamental for any garden or landscape. The vibrant green leaves and the yellow daisy-like flowers that are produced throughout the growing season are quite the sight to see. With that being said, the flowers don't always come to fruition. This is one of those years where my yacon didn't make it to flower for whatever reason. More than likely, I believe it's because of lack of water, as I did very little watering in my garden this year. Either way, just a beautiful showy plant that can get up to 6 feet tall, so design appropriately. Now I'll take this tuber as an example since we kind of broke the bottom off there. I'm going to rinse it off and then we're going to peel it back. So I love using my tie peeler to peel the yacon. And my favorite way to enjoy this is just directly out of hand, but you can make a juice. It also works very well if you chop it up, put it in a salad. Like I said, one of the nicknames is 𝗙𝗃𝗁𝗃𝗃 because it's very similar in texture and taste to a jícama. So any way that you would use that particular root crop, you could use this as well.
Those. Delicious, honey.
Crunchy, full of water. Not a lot of flavor or sweetness in this batch here, but still good. This particular tuber, as they do vary, tastes more like a watery, mild carrot to me. So now I'm just going to take my rhizomes and plant them into a little bit of moist potting mix. And we'll just throw this on into the greenhouse. But the main thing is to just keep it out of the freezing temperatures. The light isn't a factor at this point. And now we're going to have ourselves a dozen or more yacon plants that we'll plant out from rhizome come spring when the weather warms up. Now I just started with I think 2 or 3 rhizomes, and I've been growing these for many years now, just propagating those rhizomes out year after year. I've got other patches in the garden as well, but I just wanted to zoom in to this particular harvest and give you guys the rundown on how we do it and what you can expect if you're growing these in a climate that does drop below freezing in the wintertime. So that's going to do it for now, my friends. Sure hope you enjoyed today's video or you got something from it. If so, we sure do appreciate when you smash the thumb button. If you haven't already, consider subscribing to the channel. New uploads every week, sometimes every day, and we're always giving you updates on all the different things going on around here. So with that, have yourself a great rest of the weekend. Until next time, this is Dan from plantabundance.com. Take care. I'll be talking to you again soon.